Guys, we did our good, bad, and ugly a little bit yesterday, so we talked about what's happening at Texas A&M, but we need to dig deeper on what exactly happened and what is happening in the future in College Station, Texas. Upsets, part of the game, we know this, but the Aggies losing to App State at home look to be another example of perhaps a bigger issue there. So let's start at the most important position in football. Jimbo Fisher said this if he's considering a quarterback change from Haynes King to Max Johnson. Quote, "We possibly could. I mean, we'll evaluate everything this week. We'll evaluate every position this week, all the things and all the different guys." So he didn't rule it out. Carl, I'll start with you. Should Texas A&M make a change at quarterback?
I don't really think so. I'm not big on the quarterback changes. When I look at football, you go out of spring practice with a guy, you go in the camp, and I always think when you lose a game, especially when you're not supposed to, it's a knee-jerk reaction to just bench the quarterback. The most popular guy on every average or below average football team is the backup quarterback. Everybody wants that guy to play as soon as possible. Now, there are some conspiracy theorists who think that Jimbo may be playing Haynes King because his dad is the president or has the Texas Football Coaches Association or some stuff there. I don't believe that Jimbo would risk his $100 million job, though, for daddy ball politics. Stick with the guy that you thought was the best guy coming out of camp, and then go from there and see if your football team to continue to improve. I think they have bigger problems than who's playing quarterback, though.
I think you have to look and trust the coaches at Texas A&M. They're around these players, obviously, way more than Carl and I are. They know who gives them the best chance to win. But looking at Haynes King's QBR rating is a 33.1. He was 13 for 20 for 97 yards versus App State last week. They're 102nd ranked in total offense right now after playing two opponents that Texas A&M should beat handily, both at home. So I think it's definitely something to monitor. If it were me personally, I would start splitting reps with Max Johnson at least. Give him a chance to get ready to go. And if Haynes King struggles early, then you maybe give him a shot and see what he can do. But Texas A&M's offense is in a lot of trouble, and their schedule heats up big time starting this weekend. So they got some tough games ahead, and scoring 14 points at home versus an App State defense that allowed over 60 to North Carolina the week before would be quite concerning to me if I'm an Aggie fan.
Yeah, 97 yards through the air on Saturday. So is it as easy as just changing the quarterback? We'll start with you, Carl.
No, I think Jimbo needs a real offensive coordinator. I think that his offense has grown stale. Now, one of the hardest things to do, and I don't know why people are still doing it in this day and age, is being the head coach and being the primary play caller. The head coaching job right now at that level that Jimbo Fisher is coaching at is too encompassing. You have the football operations, you have recruiting, you have boosters, you have NIL, you have discipline, culture, and behavior. It's too much for you to lock yourself in the room, in the dark room, and watch film all day, which is what offensive coordinators do. He needs some help on that side of the ball. Even though he fancies himself as an offensive guy, it's time for him to update his offense through having an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and that can't happen this year. So there are very few elite play callers that are head coaches in college football. Steve Sarkisian, although technically not the offensive coordinator at Texas, I'm guessing is the offensive coordinator. Lincoln Riley come to mind, but it's very tough to do. Jimbo Fisher has not proven to anyone ever that he's an elite play caller. So I think that's something that they're going to have to reevaluate this offseason. They're playing this year as though they have the Georgia 2021 defense, and their offense is not built like that, and neither is their defense. Their defense was doubled up in time of possession last week, and they're going to have to fix it on both sides of the ball. It's not just an offensive issue at A&M right now.
Now, Blake, we say that you say that he's never been proven to be an elite play caller. He did win a national championship as Nick Saban's OC at LSU and as the head coach at Florida State in 2013. he did have Jameis Winston in that situation. But do we not give him any credit for being an elite offensive coordinator or a play caller in those situations either?
I mean, I think he's a good offensive play caller with talent around him. Texas A&M has got some young, talented wide receivers that are growing with their offense, but until they get an elite play caller under center, then I think there's a lot to be questioned with how they're calling the game right now. But they've also got Devon A-Chain as their running back, who's a really skilled, fast running back. He is not a big guy. So him and Haynes King are the top two leading rushers at A&M right now. So they're going to have to run the rock, throw the ball more efficiently. They've only had two tight ends catch one ball each this season, which isn't a great recipe for success. So hopefully maybe they're playing it close to their vest until they get into the meat of their schedule. But there's no more margin for error at Texas A&M's offense right now.
Carl, you mentioned the national championship at Florida State. That was back in 2014. Does that offense then still work now? Does there need to be some sort of involvement with Jimbo's offense?
It works if you have Jameis Winston.
What does he doesn't. What does he do now then?
Well, that's why you need an OC to bring some creativity and some new ideas to your offense. Great players change a lot of things on schemes on both sides of the ball. If you have a generational talent at a specific position, you can do things you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And they don't have that right now at the quarterback position to run this offense.
I don't know about generational talent, but we know this roster does have a lot of talent based on what Jimbo said in the offseason in response to Saban accusing him of buying players. We also know that A&M had the greatest recruiting class of all time. So is it the Jimmies and Joes or is it Jimbo? Blake?
Well, those guys are still babies. Their recruiting class is still babies. So I don't think you can depend on those guys to lead you. They probably a year or two away before they contribute to winning championships or playing at that level.
Yeah, I think in college basketball, that makes a big factor. You got a couple of good players that can change your team quickly. Football is a little bit different. Most of A&M's talent on their recruiting class last year was on the defensive side. They obviously brought in Evan Stewart, who's a really dynamic wide receiver that can stretch the field for them. That changes the game for them offensively on paper. But you got to give these guys a year or so to grow. Very rarely, if ever, has one recruiting class come in and just taken over the college football. I don't think it's ever happened. They'll have a couple of guys step up that make big plays and are big time players for them this season. But you got to give these guys at least a year or so to grow a little bit.
So Blake, you're telling Texas A&M fans to be patient. It's year 5 with Jimbo Fisher. Should they be patient? Can they at this stage in the game?
Well, Texas A&M expects to compete at the highest levels right now for a national championship, win the SEC. With the expectations with the recruiting class they brought in, kind of raised the bar, but it's not going to happen for them this year. I never thought A&M was going to be a player at the end of the season in the SEC race or a national championship race. I think next year would be the earliest that you could expect them to do any kind of damage. But the first thing they got to figure out is, how are you losing games at home at Kyle Field? You have the hardest, loudest atmosphere in college football to play in. Texas A&M should never lose a game ever at home, especially versus a team like Appalachian State. So they've got a lot of issues to work out this year. Jimbo's in great shape because he's making a lot of money. It's probably a $40 or $50 million buyout to get him out of there. So nothing's going to happen with Jimbo Fisher. Going to have to be a little more patient with him this year, and maybe play some of these young guys and get ready for the next season, because they're definitely not going to win out, and they might actually lose a lot more games than I think most people were expecting at the beginning of the season.
Carl, are you out on Texas A&M this season?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a player for the big time this year. They do have a recruiting class and generational recruiting class, but something to keep in mind especially at the D-line position, because they brought a lot of dudes in. That transfer portal will be hot, and all of those guys won't be happy. That's just the way that the game is today. So it's exceptionally hard to get a recruiting class that's as talented as they got, but also be dependent on those guys to stick around for 2 or 3 years, because that just hasn't happened lately.
We'll certainly learn a lot about them this weekend as they host a ranked Miami squad. So a lot to learn about Texas A&M.